Today, we will be discussing the film Mandy. Released in 2018, the film starts on an eerie note, showing a dying person's wish to be killed by rock and roll. The movie is set in 1983, where we see a group of men walking through a large field while others ride in a helicopter. We soon discover that they're working on a large-scale deforestation project. Red Miller, a lumberjack with a chainsaw, works on chopping down trees. However, we are introduced to Mandy Bloom, his wife, who resides in the vicinity of the Shadow Mountains in California. In her spare time, Red paints 1980s-style fantasy images that they use to sell for extra cash. She also works as a store manager and is responsible for the operations of a small convenience store. It is shown over several scenes that Red is clearly an alcoholic and not afraid to get his hands dirty when he needs to. Later, Red is seen arriving home late in the evening, where he finds his wife painting another one of her infamous otherworldly paintings. He jokes about being Eric Estrada, a famous Hollywood actor, and succeeds in making her laugh. Afterwards, Mandy tells Red that she's working on a special painting, and it will be of a jungle temple. That evening, Red asks his wife what she had been doing that day, and she tells him she had spent the afternoon reading about galaxies. She comments that her favorite planet is Jupiter, because beneath its surface is a storm that has been raging for years. In response, Red jokes that he prefers Galactus, because even though it isn't a planet, it is a monster that eats other planets. As the couple go to sleep, they both have nightmares. Red dreams that he went on a camping trip with his wife. But while he was setting their camping bags, he looked through the fire and saw her staring at him in flames. Her eyes have a strange look about them that make her look like a haunted spirit from hell. Meanwhile, Mandy dreams about waking up in a strange forest. She decides to look around, but after walking about for a while, she's horrified at the sight of a dead deer. She studies it for a while before waking up to the sight of a TV screen. Mandy feels unsettled about her dream, so she checks if Red is awake. She realizes that he had also been having a nightmare, and asks him to describe it to her. Red dodges the question and instead suggests that they move away from the Shadow Mountains. However, his wife suggests that they stay because the environment was peaceful and their little cottage was their little slice of happiness. Surprisingly, Mandy then decides to tell Red a tale from her past of how there were starlings who visited the trees around her home when she was a child. She enjoyed watching them, but her father hated them because they were always stealing cherries from the tree. One day, Mandy's father walked in with a full pillow in his arm, but had something squirming inside. Asa, it turned out, her father had captured a large number of starlings in his arms. He then picks up a large metal tool and swings it at one of the baby starlings, killing it. He then demands that each child in the house take turns, one by one, killing a baby starling. Mandy reveals that the event had traumatized her for a long time to come. The following day, Mandy picks up a horror novel about a character who receives strange visions after an encounter with a snake. Mandy is taken back to her dream from the other night where she reappears in the forest. But this time, the background changes to a darker, more frightening hue. Mandy wanders off without fear until she eventually sparks up a cigarette. Meanwhile, a man named Jeremiah Sand, a failed musician who is the leader of a religious cult known as the Children of the New Dawn, drives past in his car. He looks out the window and is enraptured by Mandy's beauty as she walks down the road. We later discover that Jeremiah teaches a false religion that is based on pleasure and abuses his female followers both mentally and physically. When he looks out the window of his van and sees Mandy walking along the road, he develops an unhealthy obsession with her and can't get her house of his head for days. Later, Jeremiah is woken by one of his female followers who asks if there is anything she can do to help him. He rudely tells her that the only person who can help him is Mandy and demands she leave. He also complains that she never seems to understand him and threatens that she won't be able to ascend if she continues to piss him off. The lady seems threatened by the thought, so she instantly backs off. Although she quiets herself, it is clear she has feelings for him. Realizing that he needs to figure out a way to kidnap Mandy for himself, he decides to go with a risky plan by summoning a unique group of people to carry out his plans. With the help of his friend, he plans to summon a group called the Black Skulls, a cannibalistic and demonic biker gang that regularly uses highly doses of LSD and other drugs. He then gives the order to kidnap Mandy with the assistance of the entire Black Skulls to his underling. Through the use of a peculiar stone flute known as the ocarina, otherwise known as the Horn of Abraxas, Swan is able to call forth the Black Skull. Being a mysterious and otherworldly group, one must offer a very specific payment to get their use. This payment consists of a large jar of strange green goo, along with a low-ranking cult member to act as a sacrifice. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Red and Mandy are having a perfectly normal night together. In the evening, after the couple has gone to bed, the cultists and the demon bikers break into their home and attack them in their sleep. After beating Red unconscious, they kidnap Mandy and bring her to their religious lair. Mandy then wakes up tied to a chair, bound and gagged by other women from the cult. Mother Marlene, a female member of the cult, drips liquid LSD into Mandy's eye and drives the stinger of a large insect into her neck. She is then dragged into a separate room where she is to meet with Jeremiah in a sexual experience. He tries seducing her through music and poetry in an awkward display. Even in her drugged state of half-consciousness, she rejects his advances and laughs in his face. Not used to this behavior, Jeremiah doesn't know how to react and begins shouting at her. Back at the home, Red wakes up chained and gagged with barbed wire. Jeremiah then approaches him, still angry about the rejection he received from Mandy. He pulls out a gun and forces a young girl next to him to play Russian roulette in front of them. In his twisted mind, he believes that this is a true expression of love and that Mandy doesn't love Red in the same way. He then pulls out a large, disturbing-looking blade with an eyeball on the end of it. He stabs Red in the side and explains to him that the cleansing power of fire cannot be underestimated. They then bring out Mandy, who is wrapped in a cloth bag. They hang her up in front of him and light her on fire. He is forced to watch as she burns alive in front of him. He eventually breaks free by using the blood from his hand to slip out of the barbed wire and crawls over to the ashes of his dead wife. She crumbles in his arms, and he looks on in horror. After falling unconscious for a brief period due to the shock, Red rushes to the bathroom to collect himself. As he consumes a bottle of vodka, he releases a carnal cry in a primal scene of emotion. After cleaning himself up, Red decides to go visit his longtime friend, Carruthers. After the two of them meet, Red receives a large crossbow and describes what he plans to do next. He is going to kill the Black Skulls, along with the religious cult. Being a local of the area, Carruthers then begins to describe who the Black Skulls are. Nobody knows where they first originated, but they are a local folktale. Apparently, they had been driven insane due to overuse of specially chemically altered drugs, and have a particular enjoyment from both causing and receiving pain. At the moment that Red is about to depart, his friend cautions him that his chances of surviving are extremely low. However, he is resolute in his pursuit of revenge for the death of his girlfriend. In order to get himself ready for the task at hand, Red then forges a custom battle axe through steel smithing. It is a deadly weapon of blades, meant for reaping lives. Very quickly, Red locates the bikers by following after them on the road. After injuring one with his crossbow, he runs him over with his car. Unfortunately, the bikers are all covered in armor, causing the car to flip, and Red is quickly captured by the gang. When Red awakens, he is in a cellar handcuffed to a heater on the wall. His other hand has been nailed to the floor. A man then mysteriously approaches him and stabs him with a small blade. The jailer is dripped wet from some kind of mucus and covered in black leather. He snarls at Red and begins to beat him until Red pulls his arm free and beats the jailer unconscious. He then pulls out the nail in his hand and sneaks away after grabbing a box cutter. While exploring his surroundings, Red realizes that he is in the home of another innocent couple. They lay dead in their room, clearly having been killed by the gang, while the other members do drugs and snort a white powder on the table. Red sneaks up to attack one of them, but he is a huge gang member who overpowers him. In a shocking twist, Red manages to catch him off guard and cut the gang member throat. He then gets into a knife fight with a second member and quickly dispatches him with a twist to his neck. He then pulls his axe down from the ceiling and grabs a few extra pieces of equipment from around the kitchen. While searching, he finds the jar of goo that was given to the biker gang at the beginning. When he dabs a small bit on his tongue, it turns out to be a ridiculously powerful drug that drives Red into a frenzied bloodlust. He sneaks out of the building and shoots an arrow through the neck of a new biker gang member. He then approaches him with his axe to finish the job, where a battle ensues. Shockingly, the gang member is still in good physical condition after taking an arrow through the neck. Unfortunately for him, Red overpowers him with his axe and kills him. The gang member taunts him the whole fight until Red ends him with a swing of his axe and uses his flaming head to light a cigarette when he is done. Later, Red breaks into the home of the religious cult, where he finds one of Jeremiah's underlings cooking drugs. When he notices the blood-soaked Red, he begins to spout off nonsense to try and escape. He then opens a cage door, releasing a captured tiger, commenting on how Red now exudes a cosmic darkness. Resigning himself to his fate, he looks up into the sky before revealing to Red where to find Jeremiah. Next, we see Red riding an ATV toward Jeremiah's lair. Riding as far as he can go, he finishes his journey on foot until he finds their religious building sitting between a pair of mountains. He beats down one of Jeremiah's underlings until he shoves a blade into his mouth and kills him violently. The young girl they were with watches in shock, but Red leaves her alone as she seems to be a brainwashed victim. Elsewhere, Red rolls up on another member of the group. With quick work of his axe, he begins taking out the members of the cult. Noticing a chainsaw on the ground, he then brings it over to attack another man. To his shock, the other religious member pulls out a chainsaw of his own, only it is far larger and more menacing. After a crazy chainsaw battle occurs, the cult member is killed when he is struck by a chain and dragged onto the active chainsaw. In the final act of the film, Red then enters Jeremiah's cult building. He crawls down a trapdoor in the floor and works his way through some tunnels before finding Mother Marlene waiting at the bottom. She tries to seduce him, which he quickly rejects when we cut to the next scene of her head being thrown into a room with Jeremiah in it. A half-naked Jeremiah is shocked to see Red and begins to spout religious nonsense. Without saying a word, Red grabs Jeremiah by the head and crushes his skull with his bare hands. He then lights him on fire and walks away with the flames at his back, completing his mission of revenge. Thanks for watching the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out when you do that. And of course, check out the other videos if you like watching recaps.